Goedemorgen. Hello everyone watching us on Facebook right now. Welcome, thank you for joining me. My name is Jason Levine, Principal Worldwide Evangelist for Adobe, focusing on digital video and audio. I'd like to thank our massive audience here at the first presentation of the day. As always, the coveted slot. This is where you want to be. Thank you, Adobe employee, for clapping. Thank you. Eric, I love you. All right. So we're going to be talking about some of the latest innovations coming to the next update to Adobe Audition. And first and foremost, when you take a look at the interface here, you'll notice that there are some obvious visual changes and that the interface is brighter, cleaner, more modern looking, more vibrant. Everything seems to pop out at you, and that is indeed the case. We've done a lot of work over the last couple of months to modernize and refine the interface. Even if you take a look at some of the minimized tracks here, you can see that we've rounded the edges of the corners here, added some nice color bounding boxes. Also, if you were to right-click on any of your tracks, you'll see that the track color selections of predefined and custom colors has been modified. So particularly if you're sharing or using dynamically linked projects from Premiere Pro into Audition, you'll see that the colors of your tracks, all the label colors that you've used in Premiere, now directly translate over into Audition. So this just makes working, organization, and that whole entire process that much better, that much just more dynamic. It gets you more in the mood of mixing. Let's face it, the UI UX experience of mixing, of editing, of illustrating, of creating is a huge part of it, right? And this just feels more welcoming. So we're so excited to have the new UI. You're also going to see some really incredible performance enhancements in terms of playback and things, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Now, a couple of things have been released in the last couple of months, which we weren't able to premiere here yet because they happened in April, so I wanted to talk to you about them. You'll notice here, if we take a look at the video, we've got our time code playing and lots of new video options. So if we right-click on our video preferences here, go into this preferences dialog, and you'll see, again, a whole series of settings here for your video timecode overlay. So you can enable your timecode, set your size, background opacity. By the way, all of this can be functioning while it's playing in real time as well. Easily move the timecode around. You can also reference session or media timecode. So in particular, if you're doing an ADR session, you might want to actually reference specific media timecode if your cue sheet has the timecode from the clips in question that you're replacing the dialogue for. So just really handy, really nice to have. It works wonderfully, and again, translates directly over from whatever you're sending directly from Premiere Pro. Additionally, in this video preferences panel, a new option that we added back in April was something called clip spotting. So this is directly related to using Audition for sound design. If you're trying to slip and slide sound effects against time code in a picture to really time out the sound design properly, you could always do this in Audition, but it was a little challenging. Now what you'll find if you zoom in, and again, you can set your snapping preference. I've got a bunch of snapping here to frames, in this case, if you're going to be actually doing clip spotting. But as you move clips around, I'm just going to click and drag this blue dotted line that you see there, this represents the exact position of my cursor. So as I'm scrubbing through frames, and you can see I'm doing that here again in the timeline, this is going to allow you to perfectly, accurately snap and lock the sound effect in question against the action in the picture. So it's just a simple technique to allow you to more efficiently perform sound design in the multi-track environment in Audition. We're really happy to have that in here as well. Now, something else in terms of organization. First of all, we've modified some of the zooming capabilities inside the UI here. You're going to find a newly optimized zoom out full axes button. And when you click this now, this had some kind of random behavior before. It'll bring all of your tracks into view, minimize accordingly if need be, and just bring everything horizontally and vertically into focus. You'll also notice, again, just better, more efficient track height scrubbing and adjustments, and you can see how fluid the user interface really is. The team has done some really great work to make this playback smoother and just really enhance that experience. So very happy to have that here. Now, one additional element of working with large sessions is that it can also get sort of daunting and confusing when you've got a barrage of different tracks and types that you're working with. So here, this is a scene from a film called The Scene Between, and directed by Brian Rawlis, and let's say that we wanted to just focus on working on dialogue. Well, this isn't a massive session, it's probably about 15 tracks or so, and I'm also viewing this in 4K on my screen. But you know, if I had to start working on specific tracks and then I'm moving around, you're doing a lot of scrubbing to find where you are in the timeline. And of course, you can work in the mixer view here. This also, for me, it's very monochromatic. It's hard to work with. So we wanted to make it easier for you to really minimize what's on screen so that you can focus, right? Focus your attention on what the task requires. So we introduced the Tracks panel. This was brought in the April release. And as you might guess, as you can see by the familiar Adobe eye icons, you can enable or disable the view of tracks that you do or don't need to see inside the multi-track view. So if I wanted to solely work on mixing dialogue, I can simply disable by turning off little eyeball icons, whatever they're called. What are these things called? Eyeballs? I'm talking to you, Adobe employee. What are those things called? Thank you. All right, comedian. He's here till Thursday. So now you can see that we only have the dialogue tracks. Now what's really cool about this tracks panel is that you can also create track visibility presets. So let's say I wanted to save the dialogue layout to preset 1, which is already pre-assigned to a shortcut. I can do that. You'll notice that we also have some presets in here. So here, show only audio tracks, show only bus, show everything. So if we want to go back to everything, I can bring everything back in view. It's not going away, it's just minimizing and freeing up screen real estate. This is probably one of the most welcome additions in the latest release of Audition, because as someone who records a lot of music, right, for albums, not uncommon to have 24, 36 track sessions, particularly if you've got layered background vocals and all of the additional production elements. It's a lot of scrolling and a lot of moving things around and a lot of constantly minimizing track height. I'm sure anyone who's used Audition, you're doing this all the time, and then maximizing here and then scrubbing around. And that's fine. It's how we've been doing it. But we have better ways now. And again, I forgot the keyboard shortcut already, but if I just want to go back to dialogue, preset 1, and there's all of my dialogue. Clean, simple, easy, track visibility. So we love this. Okay. All right, a couple more minutes here. Let's move over back to this session. Want to just show you a couple other additional cool additives that we have in Audition around source channel routing. So while Audition's multitrack still remains a 5.1 mixing environment, you can import, create, and master any numbered channeled file in our waveform editor, meaning that if you have an 8-channel MXF file, you have a 16-channel interleaved audio file, you have a 24-channel interleaved audio file, you can work on, process, master, equalize, and finish that content in our waveform view here. It can be any number of tracks. So this is a 5-channel interleaved wave that contains a series of different dialogue tracks from this piece that you see here. In our properties panel, if we select one of these clips, you will now have a visible source channel routing matrix. Now, if this looks familiar to you, when you've done your multi-channel exports through Media Encoder, right, you can adjust, particularly if you're doing video where you have reversioned audio or international soundtracks, right? So you might have channels 1 and 2, that's the US English broadcast soundtrack, 3 and 4, Spanish, 5 and 6, French, 7, 8, German, whatever. You can reroute those on export. Well, similarly here, you can also reorder and reroute the channels in the file itself non-destructively, just like this, really easily. So this just makes the process of manipulating, by the way, I want you to pay attention right here. Pay attention to this little blip, and you'll see that I can, as I change the routing, we change the position of where that channel lives, right? So cool, visual, easy, super, super cool, super easy to do. Now, one of the other things that you can do with this that I like in particular is you have different ways of bringing this content in. So if we, sorry about that, if we hold down our Alt or Option key, so if I just drag the file in by itself, you can see that it comes in as a single interleaved 5-channel wave file. If I hold down Alt or Option, however, we can separate each of those channels individually. So here, if I just, let me just get rid of all of these for just a second. Just going to add a couple more tracks here. Just real quickly, just so you can see kind of how cool this looks. Let's go back to our greatness wave. Let's start up here. Again, if I drag it into a single track, it comes in as one. Hold down Alt or Option, and it'll separate these out into their original mono configurations as individual files. Now, and note the colors as well, so vibrant, so cool. Now you can independently treat each of these, and you can see tracks 1 and 2, these were, they're coming in as stereo mix left and right. Track 3 was from a boom, track 4 was from a lav, track 5 was the U87 that he's speaking on right here. So not only can you reroute the outputs, but you can also import them independently as individual streams on individual tracks, which can then be processed independently as well. So really cool to have that flexibility directly inside of Audition here. Okay, so let me go ahead. I'm going to close this session and reopen it again. All right, let's no on that. And talk to you about 2 very exciting new processing effects that we have. The first being a new noise reduction effect, noise reduction algorithm. So Audition has had fantastic noise reduction for many, many years. If you've watched any of my trainings and videos over time, you know that I emphasize highly leveraging the spectral frequency display to do selective frequency-based noise reduction using our very classic noise reduction process, which is this one here. Okay, I don't have a noise print, so it's doing its thing. There we go. And while this one still continues to work and sounds very good, it's fairly technical. If you don't know what you're doing, it's very easy to end up with something somewhat artifacted kind of quickly. It's powerful, but you need to know how to use the tool. Also, it's a slightly older algorithm. So like all things, like the way that we see what 1080p looks like broadcast today at higher bit rates versus what it did 10 years ago, well, the algorithms for noise have changed, and how we can remove and attenuate with minimal artifacting has also changed. So it was time to introduce a new algorithm. So here now, if we go into our effects rack, and this can also be accessed, by the way, through the Essential Sound panel. Under noise reduction, you will see a new effect called denoise. Now, it's worth pointing out we still have what you just saw before, the noise reduction process, adaptive noise reduction, and the previous dehummer and all those other things. They're still there. Here's the new one. The new denoiser. Super clean, easy to use, clean interface. And you have very simple manipulations here. You have an amount slider, and I think you'll find that you technically can start using less noise reduction because of the way this algorithm works. And then you have what we call processing focus. And these are effectively different EQ curves. So that flat line means you're processing noise across all frequencies. That's the default. And with our previous algorithm, I was the first to say you don't want to process noise across all frequencies because the noise most likely doesn't live across all frequencies. However, with this new tool, with this new denoiser, with this newer algorithm, that all frequency default is actually very clean and very, very subtle. So it's careful about what it's attenuating without trying to destroy any of the program content. There's some intelligence there, right? Then, as you look across the curves, you can see this one here focusing on lower frequencies, right? So if you have an abundance of low frequency rumble or boominess, it will focus the noise reduction there. The benefits of choosing a curve like that, if that's the type of noise that you have, is that it won't affect mid frequencies, right? It's when we start denoising between 800 hertz and 5K that we start to introduce those robotic, metallic, swishy, swirly artifacts. If we're only focusing on low frequency, that's not going to happen. Okay. Similarly, if the noise in question is in the mids, you can see that we've got a little mid boost right there. This one being the opposite, right? So this is the mid is scooped out. We're focusing noise on the low end and the high end, right? It's really quite a brilliant system. And then the last one here, of course, is focus on high frequency. So this is actually really ideal for if you're trying to remove any kind of high frequency hiss, wispy, windiness. You know, wind can sort of benefit from that smile curve as well. Low end rumble, high end, you know, it's pretty good for that. So I'm just going to start with the default here. And you have this real-time graph, which is showing you sort of the input and output, and where they cross is kind of where the noise reduction is focusing most of its energy here. So let's take a quick listen to this, and I'll start to adjust the noise reduction amount as we listen.
How do you leave a footprint? Well, first you're gonna have to leave home. Go to the crazy place, even if no one's coming. You're gonna have to itch to fail, and then start from scratch. If you're gonna take advice, make sure you remember how to dance, because the beat of your own drum.
Okay, so you can see I'm at about 31%. Now for this particular one, we're also in a very loud venue here, the noise is actually a bit more on the low end and a bit on the high end. So for this particular example, this is going to be the ideal curve for me. Now, if you want to know or hear what it's doing, what it's removing, you can choose to output the noise only. So you can hear how it's affecting the program material and how much of that program content is also being attenuated as it's attempting to denoise. And it's very minimal here. All right, as we increase it, you'll hear more. But it's still pretty minimal, which is amazing.
Cold and ready to strike when the iron's hot. You have to work between our rock and a smart place.
All right. Really nice. Really clean. I'm overdoing it a little bit for effect here, but it's so easy to use. The key here is that as part of Essential Sound, again, this has replaced adaptive noise in the Essential Sound panel. This is the new, easier way to do noise reduction directly with a single slider, and it's really quite lovely. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you here is another new effect. So here's our now denoised voiceover, but this was from a different mic signal that had some excess reverberation, which I have then further accentuated. And we wanted to try and minimize some of the reverberant echo, reverberant ambience. So take a quick listen again here. I'll start somewhere in the middle here.
And then start from scratch. If you're gonna take advice, make sure you remember how to dance, because the beat of your own drum is all you got in the end. You gotta be okay with the cold and ready to strike when the iron's hot.
Okay. So again, the complexity of this reverb, it's dark. It has probably a 2.5 to 3 millisecond decay. Sorry, 2.5 to 3 second decay. And it's kind of not much above 6K, but there's not much below 100, but there's a lot in the mid, sort of everywhere. This could be a challenge. What do we do? So it's been one of those holy grail requests to offer a de-reverb or a de-verb effect. De-reverbing is very difficult because while you can minimize or attenuate echo, ambience, decay, you can't take the microphone capsule and bring it closer to the person speaking. You just can't do that. But where this really shines is if you're trying to restore that one take, that only take that you have, that sonically maybe it was done from an off-camera boom or the camera mic or something. It wasn't that direct, or it just wasn't a great recording to begin with. And the way it stands now is not usable. If we could just get rid of some of that echo, some of the ambience, some of the decay, this is where this filter will seriously impress you and shine. And you just have to try it. It will shock you in some instances at how brilliantly it really does attenuate and just remove echo. So let's go ahead and give it a shot here. Go up to noise reduction, de-reverb. Familiar interface, right? Familiar processing focus curves. It's all the same, except now we're attenuating reverb versus noise. I'm going to wind this back. Again, we'll keep it at the default all frequencies. And then I'll start playing back. Now again, this is not without some potential artifacting, right? We're trying to effectively gate all of the decay. One of the nice things that this does, though, in describing what I was just mentioning before about bringing the microphone capsule closer to the speaker, it has an auto gain function. So as you attenuate decay and effectively attenuate frequencies that are occupied by the decay of that reverb, it's going to also amplify the native signal to simulate pushing it a bit more forward, right? So you're trying to make it a little bit more intelligible, but also bring it a little closer to you, essentially. All right? So let's take a quick listen here.
And then start from scratch. If you're gonna take advice, make sure you remember how to dance, because the beat of your own drum is all you got in the end. You got to be okay with the cold and ready to strike when the iron's hot.
All right, let's put it back in now. Here we go.
You got to be okay with the cold and ready to strike when the iron's hot.
Okay. So you can hear that it's really sucking out the long decays there. It might get a little wispy. Okay, we can fix some of that with a little bit of EQ. But the idea is that you can restore a take that was otherwise too echoey, too reverberant, too ambient, focus it, make it a little bit cleaner, and make it more presentable. Okay? My honest take on de-reverbing. All right? So my friends, de-reverb, new algorithm, new effect. Denoiser, new algorithm, new effect. Source channel wrapping, source channel rerouting options, new user interface, new colors, new zoom functions, tracks panel, new video overlay options for clip spotting, time code, and ADR. And these are just some of the latest innovations coming, and some of them available now to Audition CC. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be live streaming multiple presentations from the stage today, so I'll probably see you again later. Thanks so much for tuning in. And for those of you joining me, have a great rest of your day 2 at IBC. Thank you.